Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the October Free Technique webinar. Today we are going to go over some things, bringing in a design and going over some settings as far as artwork goes. And today we're going to create a pumpkin applique with a monogram applique on top of it. And after this is done, I'm going to go ahead and post that pumpkin as a download that you guys can actually have that design and have it in generations. And but what we're going to go through, I think, are going to be some fun things, showing you how to put some dimension in and explaining some things about the quality of images. So again, welcome to the webinar, and we are recording the webinar, so you will have the link to download it as well as to view it on YouTube. So whenever that's all rendered and ready to go, we'll give you all the appropriate links. And should you have any questions, make sure to put them in the question box. It does look like we already have some questions. One of the comments was, can't see anything on the screen. I have not yet shown my screen, so just give me a minute and I will show that. So right now you should probably just see either a blank screen or, the webinar information. So right now I'm going to go ahead and show my screen, and now you should be able to see it. If you can't see it, just give it a second. And if anybody can't see it, within a couple seconds, please let me know. So it looks like everybody is able to see it. And, throughout the webinar, I will be answering questions should you have anything. But here, what we are going to do is start talking about the images and image quality. Image quality is a big thing because it can make or break, the automatic digitizing. When we look at images, images maybe at, a kind of a smaller size look really good. But once we blow them up and we look closer at the image itself, it gets quite pixelated and quite messy. And sometimes it's not a great result when we bring it into the generations program. In addition, I was working with someone before earlier, and we were talking about an image and how to bring it in, and maybe some hints and tricks to bring it in. But it seemed that that image was not doing so great. So I had her send me the image, and it was actually an image of an existing embroidery. And what we're going to do is we're going to share that image, and I'm going to show you a little bit about it and give you a little bit of insight on it. Existing embroidery is not always considered good artwork, and the reason is because you have stitches on there, and the stitches give out different colors. And if you look close to it, you'll see why, and we'll see this in a second. But also, you might see the material show through the stitches. Sometimes you might have some light density, so you can see that material. And it's just not really a good way, or good artwork to use. The program is based on color recognition. So when it sees a color, it's going to draw around that color and create the artwork for us. Once the color is drawn, the program, once you hit that generate button down here, will put the stitches in. I know we talked a little bit about this a couple webinars ago, but I want to show you a design that is an existing embroidery, a picture of an existing embroidery, and show you what I mean by how blurry it can get. So I've opened this design in Paint, and you can see from afar, it looks pretty good. But you even see, if you just look at the book, even though it's thread, you can see almost like a different shading of it. As I zoom this up, you can see it even better. So it almost looks like it's got black, and it's got tan, and it's got brown. just in this color itself. If I zoom it up even closer, it starts to get a little bit blurry. Actually, not a little bit blurry, but more blurry than I would like. And even further, some of these black lines are not, defined all the way to the edges of what I might see in a typical picture. You can see here that it kind of, you can see where it kind of could blend together at the edges of these books. And even the glasses here have blue showing through because it's the density is maybe not um, so heavy on it, and that's why you can kind of see it. Looks like it might be a little translucent, and it's kind of a cool effect. But you can even see in here, like on the blue, you've got kind of white, you've got on the red, you've got all these different colors. And what Generations is going to do is going to try and pick up all those colors. That's kind of the smart thing about Generation, but at the same time, it can hinder us too. So over here, you can see some of the white, and the white even has, even the image itself on the white, which is the background color, has different colors associated with it. Now, the great thing about Generations is that even though this is not the best artwork to work with, we can manually punch it. We can also do other things like picking colors. And just to try it out, if we go to Generations, I have Generations open right now. If I go on the right-hand side and go to Insert Image here and left-click on this, I can choose the books, and this is a pumpkin that we're going to do. Choose the books and press OK. When I press OK, it does read it as a scanned image. When it's read as a scanned image and I hit OK here, it's going to try and do the best possible reading. And actually, in my opinion, that's pretty darn good, considering that we have, a lot of noise in this design. So we have the original view, which is the original artwork, and then we have the simplified view, which is what Generations has drawn for us. The threshold on the right-hand side is between a 0 and 100%, and that's reading more or less color. So if we take this and we bring it up, and I'm just typing in a number here and then hit apply, it's going to read more detail. So it's actually even reading better. But as I see here, the eyeglasses have a lot of extra color in there. The part of it is merged with the other books. And if I bring it higher, sometimes this is good, but also sometimes this could not be so good. So you can see that the glasses start to get a little bit messier, but it is dividing more things. And we can see there are some changes here. Although I can hit the edit button here and edit this design a bit and pick some colors, you can see all of these colors are in this design right now. So if I were to generate my stitches, exit this and generate my stitches, it would put in all these colors as different areas in the design. So sometimes I can eliminate those colors just by going to the little select image color icon here, left click on that. My color bar now goes blank. I want to choose the colors that are in the design or that I want it to read. So I will choose the white, left click. I'll choose the red, left click. I'll try and get on top of that black and left click. Choose the blue, left click. Choose this brown, left click. I will choose the lighter brown, left click. Choose this one, left click. And kind of the glasses, left click. And once I do that, if I hit OK, it changes things a bit. It's getting me a little bit closer to what I would like, but there's still things that I would have to do as far as correcting this. It looks like I'm going to zoom in here on the right-hand side. I left-click on the zoom in tool and then zoom in one at a time. There's definitely things that we would have to correct. And even that we can, take areas, merge them together. There's a lot of different things that we can do. But I did just want to show you this artwork because, it's not optimal, but we can still work with it. It still gives us a better starting point than what we saw at the beginning. So if I hit exit and then continue, there's the design size. So it's even pretty small. So we're going to size it up a little bit just so I can see a little bit better um, of the different colors. Press OK, and then generate my stitches. And you can see it did a lot better than it would have if we brought it in just the way that it was. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and bring it in, and we'll hit OK. Let's bring it up to that 75, which I had before, and hit apply, and then hit continue. I'm not going to do any changes to it. 100, press OK, and then generate. And on the left-hand side, look how many colors you're seeing in this design. But if we look at the first one, you can see there's a lot less colors. There's still going to be cleaning up to do, but there's a lot less colors that you can see. So that's something that I did want to show you guys. I think it's a great little intro to kind of images and whatnot. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with something a little bit better as far as artwork goes, but it still has, you know, some issues. And there are times when I have images that I bring in, and I might bring it in different ways. You know, I might bring it into the program several times before I figure out what's the best way to start with. So I'm going to close these guys out, and I'm going to start a new design. And in here, on the right-hand side, I'll click Insert Image. When I click Insert Image, there it goes to my, my two designs. I'm going to choose the pumpkin, and I'm going to press OK. Now, JPEGs typically have a lot of that extra color information in there that I was talking about, and you can see that it's seeing it as a scanned image. Now, with this being a scanned image, I'm going to show you that how we can see those extra colors in there. But before we do that, you see that the knockout of the pumpkin, you know, where I would put my monogram, is white. And this is the same color as the background. I want stitches in here because I want to create an applique. Basically what I want to do is create the pumpkin as an applique, you know, around the whole thing. And then I want to create the white as an applique. So I could have maybe like a cute like chevron pattern fabric in there on the pumpkin area, but in the white do a different, you know, maybe like a polka dot pattern or something, and then put my monogram on top of it. So I'm going to do 2 layers of applique on here. And because that white is the same color as the background, I would like to deselect this Do Not Generate Background Color. That way, anything that is enclosed white will have stitches in it. And so when I do that, it's going to put the white inside here, but it's also going to put the white inside these little curly cues, which is okay because we can delete that later. I'll go ahead and press OK. And when I press OK, I want you to see that it's rendering it. And as I look here, and it may be harder to see on your screen just because we're doing screen share, you're going to see some areas in here that are actually different shades of orange. I could bring down the thresh a little bit so that it would read less color, but I think the easier thing to do, I can see here there's a little spot that's an off-white color. I'm going to hit the edit button here. And look on the left-hand side, look how many colors it's bringing in. Even though this is a nice, clean piece of artwork, it's still bringing in a lot of extra color. You can kind of see that here. If I zoom in, look at all that, like, it's just kind of messy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to choose only the colors I want the program to read. And then with the other colors, it will merge those colors together. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to select Image Colors, click on that, left-click on the white, left-click on the green, and left-click on the orange. I always want to left-click on that white background, even though it's an area in here, but the white separates the orange and the green from the white, you know? So if I didn't choose the white, maybe this whole background would be green instead of white. So After I do that, I'll press the OK button on the left-hand side here. And once I press OK, you can see just those three colors. If I zoom out, I am on the zoom out tool, I can see it a little bit better. So it looks much cleaner than it did before. I'll go ahead and hit exit. And after hitting exit, you can see the edges don't have all that extra color information. I can then hit continue. And once I hit continue, it asks me the size. I'm going to bring that size down to about 125, which is about 5 inches. And actually, let's bring the Y down to 100, which is actually 4 inches tall. And when I click on the X, it'll change the X accordingly, which is about a little over 4 inches tall, and press OK. Once I press OK, I can see the image in there. And if I generate my stitches, now you will see that I've got my design in there. I'm going to turn the background image off. So you can see that the white did stitch inside of the pumpkin and inside of the vine. I'm going to take a quick second here and look at the questions that we do have. And says that you can't hear the audio. Now, okay, hold on a second. Let me answer this question real quick. Okay, so question is, how did I turn the background image off? At the top of my screen, I do have a little canvas here with an X through it. If I press that, I can click that on and off. I can also go up to View on the main menu bar, and I've got something under here called Hide Image. So if I left click on Hide Image, it turns it on and off. So you can see that we do have white inside, but we also have white inside of the vine areas, which really I don't want. First thing though that I like to do is you can see that on the background, that box behind it, is that I do have like a white dotted line. And this white dotted line, even though the white background is not stitching, there's still an area behind it. So if I right click on it, it selects that area. I do like to go in and select all these background areas and then delete them. So if I hold the Control key and right click on each area, each background area, it selects them all. And then I can hold the Control Delete. Once I do Control Delete, notice that you won't see those dotted lines anymore. Again, I'm just getting rid of the area, even though there's no stitches in there. It's just something that I do like to do so it doesn't confuse me later on, especially when I'm working in the edit outline mode. Now, if you turn that image back on in the background, you can still see the white background, but that is only on the image. I don't have any stitches here. And I can tell that I don't have stitches there because of a couple of things. One, on the left-hand side, I don't see any like kind of squared areas. And then if I do turn the image off in the background, it hides that. Now, the next thing is that I want to delete the white areas inside the vine. And if I'd like to do that, sometimes I like to zoom in on the area. So I'll left click on my zoom in tool, left click, hold and drag, and zoom in as close as I can to this area. I'll press escape to get out of the tool, right click inside the area, and now you can see it selects that white. And you can see that over here on the left hand side. I'll hold the Control key again to select multiple areas and right click, and then Control Delete. And it gets rid of those white areas in the background. If I'd like to get my pumpkin back into my view, I'm not seeing the whole pumpkin right now. At the top of my screen on my view toolbar, I can see zoom selected objects, and I can see zoom all design 1-to-1. These three are pretty nice, and I like to use these three quite a bit. In that if I zoom all design, I can get my whole design in screen centered. A lot of people say, hey, what if I lose my design? You know, maybe I'm way off to the side. I don't know where it is. I'm trying to find it and I can't get to it. This zoom all design is a great key to press so that I can get back and see that whole design in screen. So I left click on that and it brings it back into the center of my screen. Okay, so first things first. Actually, I'm going to take a little bit more time than anticipated, and I'm going to show you another way to bring in this pumpkin that might be a little bit faster than the first way we brought in. And that's I'm going to go to a new design, and on the right-hand side, I'm going to go to Insert Image and choose the pumpkin again, press OK. And instead of this time doing scanned image, I'm going to do simple artwork. So I just override it by left-clicking inside simple artwork. The next thing on the right-hand side, I can define the colors that it wants to read. So it was kind of like that spool of thread that I clicked earlier on the scanned image. If I deselect auto select here and go to pick color, here I can then use my eyedropper, and you can see, I'm going to zoom out here. This design's rather large, that I can kind of go through here and pick the colors with my eyedropper. As I move my cursor over the different colors, you can see the different colors change down here at the bottom. Now RGB stands for red, green, blue. These are the red, green, blue values. So as I put my cursor over, or my eyedropper over the white, you can see that white color chip show up at the bottom. And to set it, I just left click. Now it's over here on the right hand side. So that's one of the colors that I chose. I can place my cursor over the green, and I like to make sure that I'm over kind of more of a solid area. As I get to the edges, you can see that green kind of change a little bit. See that down at the bottom? If I left click on the green, left click there, and then I'm going to choose orange, left click. If I'm happy with those colors, I can go ahead and hit OK. But let's say I accidentally choose a color I choose a color on accident. If I want to get that color out of there, I can left click on it and then just hit the delete key on my keyboard. Once I'm happy with the three colors I chose, or the colors of the design, you can hit OK. Once I hit OK, on here I do want to make sure do not generate background color is deselected, because I do want to generate the background color inside here, and then press OK. Once I press OK, again, we'll go here to the Y, change it to 100, press OK again, and then you can see when I generate my stitches, it's only going to do the three colors, not like it did before with the book and the other pumpkin. In here, I am just going to start deleting the areas I don't want altogether. So I don't want the background. And again, what you're seeing is the image in the background. You're not seeing stitches in this kind of square. So I am going to turn that background off. It might be a little bit easier to see. I'm going to right click on this area, hold my control key down, and I'm going to hold my control key down while I right click on these other areas. I'm also going to include the inside white areas of the vine. Right click and right click. And then while holding control, hit delete on the keyboard. Not backspace, but delete. So now you can see that we accomplished the same outcome as we did with that other one being a scanned image. So sometimes, this is why I say sometimes I bring in designs several different ways. Okay, so after we get rid of the areas we don't want, let's start working on our applique. I want both of these areas to be applique. And if I right click on the area, you can see I right clicked on that pumpkin. And with that, you can see that it's got the blue and white flashing the blue and white flashing line going on the inside of the pumpkin as well as the outside of the pumpkin. Well, there's a hole here. And if I hide my white stitching, you can now see that hole. So the program thinks that this will be the fabric. when really fabric is also going to be in here. And the reason I'm saying is that when we do both designs as applique, I'm going to show you what happens. So I've right-clicked the orange area, and I'm going to hold the control key down and right-click on the white area. Both areas are selected, and I can see over here on the left-hand side on my stitch sequence viewer that both areas are shaded. I'm going to go down here to the stitch type and use the drop-down arrow, left-click on it, and then choose applique. Now when I choose applique, I'm going to right-click off to the side so we can see this. And I'm also going to choose Zoom All Design. You can see I have a white applique on the inside, and then we have part of the orange applique on the outside. Well, really what I want is I don't really need this extra stitch of applique, because what I'd like to do is have basically the entire pumpkin one fabric, and then the inside another fabric. So we're kind of layering fabrics, which is okay for this. So what I have to do is actually fill up this hole, or fill up this void. I'm going to right-click inside the orange, or what would have been the orange if it was filled with stitches, and then go up to View and View Outline and left-click. Once I choose View Outline, you can see that hole here. I need to fill it. So in order to fill the void, I go up to Outline on the main menu bar, scroll down to Fill Void, scroll over and down to Fill All Voids. There's only one void in here, so if I click on this, it's just a one-time fill, left click, and it fills everything up, which is just the one void. Now I'll generate the stitches, and now you can see that this is all going to be one fabric. So the way that applique works is that on the left-hand side, we have 3-step processes. You can see it, number 1 and number 2. So the first one, you'll have 3 steps, which is the placement, the tack down, and the cover stitch. And then step 2, you have the second one, you have the placement, the tack down, and the cover stitch. So what these are is the placement stitch is going to show you where to place the fabric. And that stitch is, when we export this, it actually exports as 3 different colors here. So on your machine, it will stop, because when it sees a color change, the machine stops. So the placement stitch will show you the exact place of where to put down the fabric. And then the machine will stop. The machine stops, you put your fabric down, and then you don't actually change your colors, even though the machine says to. You just press start again. And when you press start again, it'll then do the tack down stitch. The tack down stitch will hold down the fabric so that you can cut the fabric after it's secured onto the garment or onto whatever you're stitching on. So the second step, it'll do the tack down and it'll stop again. And at that point, you can take your scissors and go ahead and cut around the fabric. Once that's all done, you press start again, and it will do finally the cover stitch. So it is, again, it's breaking it up to that 3-step process. Right now, if I look at the left-hand side, it's going to do the white one first and then the orange one, which doesn't make sense because I want the white one on top of the orange one. Well, we'll change that a little bit later. We're going to, first do the layout of the whole thing, and then we'll change the stitch order. So we have this nice template. We've got the 2 appliques. Let's go ahead and put our monogram inside this middle applique. We have some building blocks that are monogram, and I really like that center, that circle monogram. A lot of people call it the master circle, and we do have it as a building block. We do have it available on our website too, if you don't already have it. So what we're going to do is we have to pull up the building block folder, and we're going to go to View, Toolbar, and Building Block Bar. And in here's our building block bar at the bottom. You can see that it did cover up some of my pumpkin. So what I'd like to do is I really need this center part right here. Although I am going to hit the zoom all design right now and get that back into my screen so I can see everything. And now I'm going to choose my initials. And I'm going to do the circle monogram. I'm going to start with the left one. And my first initial is A, so I've got left A. I left click on it, and then I left click, hold, and drag. And I'm actually going to drag it over here off to the side. I'd like to do this over here because I want to first kind of lay it out and then bring it into the center. Then I'm going to do the middle monogram. The middle monogram is typically the last name, so I'll go to circle monogram center. B is my last, begins B, sorry, B is the initial of my last name. So I'll left click, hold, and drag and bring it up here. And I'll go ahead and kind of bring it to where I would like to see it laid out. And then I'm going to go to the circle monogram right, choose my middle name initial, which is M. I'm going to left click, hold, and drag, bring it up here, and move it into place a little bit. And now I see that it's, it's in a pretty good spot, although you can see it's a little bit big from my circle over here. I am going to, first of all, make sure that these are centered the way that I want them. So I'm going to start up here with my cursor, left click, hold, and drag a box around the entire item. It selects the three initials, and you can see that they're all selected because it has 8 black nodes around the whole thing, and then kind of transparent nodes around each letter. Down at the bottom of my screen, I do have the align vertical center and align horizontal center. And this is the align horizontal center is really the one I want to work with because it aligns everything horizontally, items that are next to each other on that horizontal line. So I left click on that. Looks like it's pretty spot on. I also want to make sure that I have the same amount of spacing between each letter. And that is this icon right here, the horizontal space. Again, I need to make sure everything is selected and then left click on horizontal space. Looks like it was pretty spot on as well because it didn't really move. Let me show you what would happen if, things were off. So I just moved that M over to the side. I'm going to left click, hold, and drag. And I'm going to click on that align horizontal center. And it aligned everything. Now, I have quite a bit of space in between this one, but a little space in between that one. This horizontal space is going to average those two spaces out. So if I click on that, now it averages those, but that's not really what I want. So what I can do is if I do have that, already aligned, I could always left click on the A and use my arrows, but let's just say I get it here. That's about the space I want. And, we're not always right on with our mouse movements. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to move them together. I'm going to left click, hold, and drag and select everything. And you'll see me here, selecting and deselecting. Anything that's selected with black nodes or nodes at all and not the flashing lines is a left click. To deselect things is just a left click off to the side. So I know I'll left click on something, I'll left click off to the side to deselect it. Left click off to the side. To select everything, I'm just going to left click, hold, and drag, draw a box around it. Again, I will click on the align horizontal center and also the horizontal space. So I've got things the way that I want them. So I like that layout, and let's group that together because I don't want to break them up. I don't want to accidentally move something around. So to group them, down at the bottom here, I have this group on group icon. I can click on that. And once I do that, notice now that those transparent nodes go away. So now I can move that all together. So I'm going to move it here to the center of my circle. And you can see it's definitely way too big. Sometimes I like to view this in the outline view. And the reason is I can see it, in the wireframe a little bit, although I can't see the stitches. So maybe I'll take that back and we'll just do this in the stitch view. So I'll click on Zoom All Design again. And if I'm done with the monograms, I'm going to turn the building block bar off because it does give me more space to work with on my working area. So I'll go up to View, Toolbar, turn off the building block bar just with a left click, and then we will go ahead and click on Zoom All Design again, so it gets a little bit bigger. Left click off to the side just in case anything is selected that I don't want. I'm going to left click on the monogram, and on any one of these corner nodes, I'll place my cursor over it. It turns into a two-way diagonal arrow. As a little hint here, if I hold my Shift key and left click, hold, and drag, it's sizing it from the center. And I can see I'm just sizing it from that center point. And then I can also use my arrow keys and kind of move this around to line it up. I'll left click off to the side and regenerate my stitches because I need to make sure that the stitches recalculate, especially for this monogram. So now I've got my monogram, inside my my second applique, and it looks like it's pretty well centered. With the pumpkin here, I can select everything. So I can actually go up to Edit, Select, and Select All. And then let's try and use this Align Vertical Center. And it actually is a little bit off, and it's because the pumpkin, it's not quite square with the center monogram. So maybe I'll take that monogram and just kind of eyeball it and move it over. I could also do some grouping and ungrouping, but I think eyeballing it is good enough. I can even size it a little bit bigger if I wanted to. We can play with the sizing as much as possible. So what I have is I have the inside applique, outside applique, the vine and stem, and then the monogram. I'd like to reorder this a little bit differently. One thing that I think is kind of nice in this program is that we can move these the stitch order several different ways. I am going to take the vine and the stem and have that stitch first. So I'm going to left click on here, right click inside the frame, and say Move to Top. Then I am going to go to this pumpkin or the orange applique and have that stitch second. I have the stitch first because I want the orange applique to cover that stem and those vines just a little bit. So I'm going to have number 3. I'm going to left click inside number 3, right click, and I can say Move to, and I say I want it to move before number 2, which is this white applique. So I press 2 and press OK. Right click off to the side to deselect, and then I have, it looks like everything else is in place because then I have my applique and then I have my lettering. If I want to change the color of my lettering, easy way to do that is just left click on that color chip that represents your lettering, come down to the bottom right, and I'm just using regular Windows colors, left click on that, and I'm going to change it to black, and then press OK, and right click off to the side. So if I'd like to just kind of view it in the 3D view, I can see what it's going to look like. The last thing I'd like to do in this design is give a little bit more definition to the stem and these vines and separate these vines from the stem and also give the stem a different stitch type so it looks a little bit, I don't know, just a little bit more natural, I guess. So I am going to turn off the 3D view. I'm going to right click on the stem and the vines, and you can see it's all one piece. I'm going to come up here on the upper right hand side and click on Zoom Selected Objects and left click. I'm zooming in on what I have selected. That's how that tool works. I'll then go up to View on the main menu bar. I'll scroll down to View Outline. And in View Outline, here is where I can kind of see that artwork. And this is where I can change the artwork should I want to. So this is where I would go and separate these areas from each other. I'm going to go up to Outline on the main menu bar and scroll down and choose Adjust with Align. When I left click on Adjust with Align, my cursor turns into a crosshair. I'm going to start outside the gray area, left click. Oh, it's not wanting to left click. Hold on a second. Oh, you know what? I chose the wrong tool. That's what not to do, guys. Instead, we want to go to outline and divide with a line, not adjust with a line. So we want to start outside here. Left click, makes a point, and left click. It acts like a scissors. And I'm not being perfect because I'm going to show you a little bit how we can clean it up. I'm going to come over here, left click and left click, press enter, and then it splits it. I do want to make sure that I'm outside both of the gray areas so that it can make a complete cut. Press escape to get out of the tool. Right click off to the side, and I'm going to right click on the stem. You can see that the stem is now separated from these vines. And with this, I am going to adjust these areas. And this is where I use the adjusting tool. So I'll go up to outline and I'll do adjust with an arc. And in using adjust with an arc, my cursor turns into a crosshair. And I want to adjust the segment. First, I'm going to go ahead and click on zoom selected object so we can get a little bit closer in here. And I want to come from here, I left click, set my point, to here, left click and set my point. And you can see that it selected, I selected 2 points and isolated the segment I want to adjust. I'll left click on the segment once it's blue, left click one time, and then adjust that arc. Once I'm happy with where that red line is, I left click to set it. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Left click and left click. Left click, arc it, and set with a left click. I'm still in the tool, so I'm going to hit escape to get out of the tool. I'll right click on my vine over here, and with my vine, you can see now there's a space in between my stem and my vine. So let's bring that on over. And to do that, I'll go up to outline, edit outline mode, and in edit outline mode, I can see my my nodes. And I'm going to just take the node, left click on it, left click, hold and drag, left click, hold and drag. Right click over here, I'm still in that tool, so I'll left click on this, left click, hold and drag, left click, hold and drag. So I'm overlapping just a little bit. There are some nodes here that I do see that we can delete. So if I right click here, I can delete the point. Right click here, delete the point. I can see something over here too. Right click here, delete the point. Right click, delete point. I could also use the adjust with an arc tool. Right click, delete point. Right click, delete point. So, you can go in here and find those little areas that might have a little kind of little sharp point and clean those up. I'm going to right click off to the side to deselect everything. I'm going to then go to zoom all design, right click off to the side and generate my stitches. Once I do that, you can now see the stem is one piece, the left vine is one piece, and the right vine is one piece. Right click off to the side to deselect, and I'm just going to view it in the 3D mode. I would like the vines to stitch before the stem. So all I'm going to do is take the stem, left click on the stem in the stitch sequence viewer, and then left click, hold and drag and bring it down in between 3 and 4. You can see it highlight black in between those two, and let go of my left click. Right click off to the side to deselect. And the last thing I'm going to do here is give this stem a little bit of a different look. If I right click here on the stem, it selects it. I then will go into my stitch properties, left click on the property settings or hit the space bar. Right now it's on auto judge. I'm going to change it to a complex fill. It already is a complex fill. I can already tell just by looking at it. I'm going to go to the complex tab. And in the complex tab, the first thing I'm going to do is change the angle. The angle right now is kind of going in, this direction right here. I'm going to have it go at 0. So I'm going to highlight it, type in 0, enter, and actually I meant to hit apply, but enter basically is okay, and it brings it at a 0 stitch angle. I want to do one more thing. So I go back into the property settings, go to the complex fill, and this time I'd like to use a random stitch length. But with my random stitch length, I'm going to extend the maximum step or the maximum stitch length to about 6 millimeters and take the minimum stitch length to about 2 millimeters. I'll hit apply, and when I hit apply, I can see how it kind of looks a little bit different, looks a little bit of a different texture. I can even play around, maybe I'll bring that down to 5 and maybe 1.5. I'll apply that, and it gives it a little bit of a different look. I can also go back to the basic tab, and if I want to change the color, I can certainly look at changing the color, and I'm just using Windows colors here, maybe more like a stem color. Press OK and apply that, and then OK. Or we can always change it back to, whatever color you want. Right click off to the side here, and now you can see that we have a nice applique design with 2 layers of applique. And the way that this is going to stitch is that it's going to stitch the left vine first, then the right vine, then the stem, and then we start the applique process. We have the placement, tack down, and cover of the big part of the pumpkin. So again, it will see this as 3 different colors. So when you bring your design into your machine, you're going to see a lot more colors than really the colors of the design. And that's because of that 3-step process. So you're going to have the placement stitch. It's going to, do a stitch exactly where that fabric needs to go. The machine will stop, place the fabric down onto the material, and then it'll say to change your thread, but you really don't change your thread. Then go ahead and stitch again, and that's your tack down stitch. After that, the machine will stop and say, hey, change your thread. You're really not changing your thread, you're just going in there and cutting it. Then you'll hit start again, and it'll do the cover stitch. Then it will do the next part, and that next part, again, is the middle section here. And after that, you have your monogram. So you've got a nice, cute little monogram. I think that would look great on hand towels and whatnot. And what we will do is we will have this on our website as a download, and you'll get that in the email. We did go a little bit over time, which I always have a lot of ambitions. I have big ambitions for classes. So I'm going to look. It looks like we do have some questions. And it here's, let's see, is there a jump or single stitches between the vines? And if we look at the vines, it's a great question. I think here we are going to see that actually there's a trim, so it would be a jump. But what I can do here is I can delete this trim. You can see on the left-hand side, that's where I see that trim. So, if you don't have a machine, like an industrial type machine that doesn't have trimmers, it's going to jump. So I can deselect this, and then I can regenerate my stitches. And now I can see that travel stitch, which would be better for the design. So let's go ahead and zoom in here. I will turn off the 3D, and now you can see that travel stitch instead of that jump stitch. So great question there. How do I get my settings back to factory for my applique settings? And does it put all settings in all areas back? I'm not sure about that second part of the question, exactly what you mean by that, but getting the settings back to factory settings, you would go to stitch, let's see, no, I'm sorry, accessories, and then you can go to manage fabric settings. Right now it's default. And if you go over to applique, you can click on applique and load and make sure default is selected. So you would click default, open, and save that as default. You can also, I'm sorry, I'm getting jumbled up. You would click load factory property, and then you would click yes to overwrite it. That's what you would do. My bad, wrong thing. You can do that by going up to, you can also go up to accessories, default stitch settings, go over here to applique, make sure you check applique, click load factory property, yes, save that as the default, which is not the underscore default, but just this default, and hit save, and yes. So that's how you would get back to the property settings. We had another question about the how do you create the applique again? Basically, the applique is a stitch file, or I'm sorry, a stitch type. Um, and what we do to create an applique is basically we select the area. The area is, if you look at the circle, imagine the stitching as the fabric. So we want this to be applique, and we just select it with a right click. We can do it a couple different ways. We can go to Auto Judge down here at the bottom, use the drop down arrow, and then choose applique. And then it will automatically create that applique. With this one right here, we wanted to fill the hole because otherwise it would just see this, the orange just as the applique or as the fabric. So here we went into View, View Outline, and then we went to Outline, Fill Void, Fill All Voids, and then we can go in and say Applique. Right click off to the side. So, creating applique is pretty easy. It's just from an existing area. Okay, so other questions. What is the stitch width around the edge of the pumpkin? The edge automatically is 4 millimeters, so that's pretty typical. I'll right click, let's see, let's go ahead and click on Zoom All Design. When I right click here, I can go into my applique properties. When it's right click selected, I'll go up to the property settings, and then I can go up to applique, and I can change my width in the applique if I want. You don't want it too small because you want to make sure that it covers all the raw edges. You can also change your offset. The offset means that, right now it's at -2. So if I change it to -1 and hit apply, it's actually going to go a little bit more on the outside here of that blue and white flashing line. The blue and white flashing line is kind of the origin line of where the line sits. So what's going to happen with applique, if you have it at a -2, the line for the applique is going to sit inside here -2 millimeters. And then from the -2 millimeters, the applique is going to go halfway on each side. So it's going to go 2 millimeters on one side of the line and 2 millimeters on the other side of the line because the width is 4. So when you have it at -2, it looks like it goes right to the edge. If I have it at 0, you're going to see it go half and half on side of that blue and white flashing line because 0 is the blue and white flashing line. So you can see that change. You can have a shorter or, a thinner width if you want, but you always have to make sure of these other settings, as far as your placement and tack down. This could be a whole nother webinar. And if you guys like, if you want to write an email to me and say, yes, I'd like to see a whole webinar on the applique settings, I'm happy to do that. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time to go a little bit further beyond this. So you guys asked some great questions. Another good question, can we use a cutting machine to cut the applique? Depends what kind of cutter you have, but absolutely you would just need to make sure the artwork and the applique design match properly. And that's going to be in your artwork program for the cutter. So yes, you can absolutely do that. There's a lot of different ways to cut applique, even cutting the fabric beforehand without a cutting machine. You can do that, but there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. And like I said, if you guys want to do a webinar on applique, just shoot me an email and let me know. But I really appreciate everybody attending the webinar. This will be up for viewing on our YouTube channel and downloadable from our website. I'm also going to include the design in the gen file format. Now this is Generations 2.0, so it will work in the Generations 2.0 program as the gen file. I'll also upload the DST file should anybody have a different program. So again, thanks for coming. You guys won't need to do anything. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, and we'll see you next webinar. Take care, guys.